Hey everyone, Pugs here with one new review for y'all. As you can see by my locomotively themed graphics today I'll be covering the Great Patty Caper, also known as Mystery with a Twistery, which I think is a much better name, or at least a much more fun one. Not to mention that this episode literally just adds on 2 words to the title of Patty Caper, which can be mighty confusing, but that's enough about the title of this episode. Obviously, this is a special episode, and so it's getting the special episode treatment, hence fun graphics. And as always, I'd like to say thank you to everyone watching today. Your viewership is appreciated, always, always, always. And with that, let's just get right into this little mystery. If you've been keeping up with my reviews for enough time, you probably won't be surprised that I absolutely love that this episode is a mystery plot. I love mysteries. I love when this show does mysteries. I already said how the title of this episode is similar to Patty Caper, but another similarity is that they both have mystery plots, and I utterly adored Patty Caper, so maybe this episode won't be so different? I guess you'll just have to wait and see. Another thing I associate this episode with is the old Mystery Train Island from Pop Tropica. Yes, I was a Pop Tropica kid, and that was like one of my favorite islands. I also associate this episode with Le Master of Disguise from the Backyardigans, which also featured a mystery on a train. There are many shows that do this sort of thing, given that they are all, in the end, referencing Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express, which I have, in fact, read. Okay, all of this is besides the point. Actually, I don't even think there is a point. So let me just move on and say that the Great Patty Caper is another special episode that doesn't feature Patchy the Pirate. However, unlike the Clash of Triton, the last special I reviewed, it works in this episode because this episode is not painfully boring like that one was. Nah, I'd say that this episode is rather engaging. But is it good? Let's discuss. One thing that I can always appreciate in an episode is urgency, and this episode shows it when it wastes no time getting into the meat of the plot. Seeing SpongeBob treat being out of Krabby Patties with a certain gravitas, a certain melodrama, is, like usual, very entertaining and a great start to this episode that kickstarts the plot in a high gear. Truly, this episode is like Patty Caper in a lot of ways, but I suppose there are only so many ways that you can differentiate 2 episodes about some kind of mysterious scheme involving Krabby Patties. And to be clear, I think that the 2 episodes are very different. There will be no rip-off complaints coming from me, don't even worry about that. But anyway, I loved the moment of Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob trying to make some new patties, and there was just like a nice dynamic between the two of them here, and there were jokes that, even if they weren't super funny, were at least amusing throughout the scene as well. As the episode goes on, I feel the need to explain why I think Mystery with a Twistery is a better name for this episode, other than the cute rhyming. I just think it better describes this plot, because there's some real twists and turns as we proceed through this special. Even in this beginning, the Great Patty Caper subverts our expectations by having the real plot be about Mr. Krabs trying to make Plankton stop attempting to steal the formula, rather than what it had seemingly been setting up by having SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs forget how to make the patties. But later on, we see that this is a double subversion because once Mr. Krabs gets the formula sent away to an obscure location, in a very entertaining sequence, if I do say so myself, we get the hilarious reveal that SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs forgot to read the formula before doing so. And this isn't the last time we'll be seeing some fun little twists in the story either, so the alternate name is truly fitting. And the plot structure being like this makes this episode increasingly worthy of being a special. Anywho, since SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs forgot to read the formula before sending it away, it turns out that the real plot of this episode is SpongeBob, accompanied by Patrick, going out to retrieve the formula from the safe deposit box on the other side of the ocean. How fun. Why Patrick is there, I have no idea. Well, okay, that's a lie, I know why. It wouldn't be a special without, at the very least, SpongeBob and Patrick. And as we start getting into this little adventure of theirs, I gotta admit that the fact that this episode so heavily takes place on a train is a huge win for me because I love trains a lot. We also get yet another moment of subverting expectations as Plankton actually fails to catch the train, at least for now, in a funny sequence. On the train, we meet some very interesting characters, such as the conductor, who is vehemently not a butler, or the nanny with a very weird and low-key creepy design, which SpongeBob and Patrick do take notice of, And then there's also a lady with bright red hair who I have many questions about right off the bat. And after we meet these three, another plot point comes barreling down like a hammer, and this is the reveal that SpongeBob no longer has the key to the safety deposit box. Commence the freakout. Luckily, or I suppose unluckily for him, Plankton comes across SpongeBob at that exact moment, and SpongeBob, of course, blames him for the missing key. This part of the episode also feels a lot like Patty Caper to me, with Patrick acting as an enforcer type. The Great Patty Caper then proposes that this is perhaps a locked door type of mystery, where one of the people on the train had to have stolen the key. This doesn't end up being the case, much to my slight disappointment, but for the moment this does make me a lot more interested in the episode, because no wonder we'd met all of these interesting characters on the train. We've got a whodunit on our hands. And I like how Patrick shouting for the cops from the window somehow gets them to actually come. And because the Great Patty Caper is a special, we of course gotta cut back to the Krusty Krab to see what kind of mayhem is going on over there. Because remember, the restaurant doesn't have any patties. As you might expect, it's pretty bad, and poor Squidward is being terrorized by the townspeople. Why Mr. Krabs stays open in moments like these, I don't understand. Well, it's probably because he wants to make money, but like, damn, just close until you have Krabby Patties again. There's something else about this scene too that I like, but I'll talk about it later. Once all the passengers are lined up outside of the train, I've gotta say that this scene has gotta be the best in this episode. First of all, Tom Kenny's delivery when SpongeBob interrogates the baby is simply great and makes that entire sequence fucking hilarious. And then we get the twist that the nanny and the baby were actually the Jewel Triplets gang, because why not? I just really like how this scene plays out, like the whole set of reveals that each of these people are criminals, but not criminals who stole the key. It's just hilarious. And it reminds me a lot of Slimy dancing too. I also loved the joke with the random guy turning into a werewolf. Like, who is coming up with this stuff? And I love how no one is even fazed by this. This scene is followed up with the rather underwhelming reveal that Patrick had the key the whole time. But you know what? I'm fine with that. I think it fits with the way that this episode has repeatedly subverted expectations. Man, with the amount of times I keep using that phrase, I sounded like someone hating on The Last Jedi or something like that. Anyway, this works for me since we didn't actually spend that much time with the key being lost, so it didn't feel like this was dragged out in any way. And besides, this underwhelming reveal is followed by Plankton actually stealing the key this time and kicking SpongeBob and Patrick out of the train. This leads to a very entertaining sequence of SpongeBob and Patrick pursuing Plankton through the train, and this ends with Plankton trapping the two best friends in the locomotive part of the train. And I really liked this part because it had plenty of great jokes, and I also just loved the chaos, and like the part where they're running around like panicking just amuses me a ton. I also feel like I see people use that as like a reaction gif on Twitter. Oh god, why did I just say gif like that? I usually say gif. I swear. I feel like I just go between both pronunciations. This isn't in the script. Okay, moving on. I also loved the joke with Patrick breaking the brake. Like, that was a combo of visual and wordy humor that worked perfectly. In English, that is. I imagine this joke doesn't work as well in other languages. Can anyone check in on that? Anyway, Patrick's blunder here causes the train to spiral out of control, which is just hilarious, and I love how there's just these buildings on the track for no reason at all. I love Patrick's attempts at stopping the train. They were hilarious, and they also remind me, or I guess the other way around, of those British SpongeBob videos, specifically the second one. I'll link it in the description so y'all can see this silly thing that's been making me laugh for like the past few months. For some reason, I just really loved the animation of Patrick running in front of the train. It just makes me laugh whenever I see it. I also love SpongeBob's unfaltering confidence in Patrick. Bill Fagerbakke also just does great in these parts, which isn't unusual. And Patrick's attempts to put a stop to the train cause it to start drifting in a way that might put the Polar Express to shame. That is what Tokyo Drift is about, right? Meanwhile, Plankton seems to be having a grand old time, reaching the safe deposit box with no issue. However, this wouldn't be a mystery with a twistery if we didn't have yet another twist in this plot, now would it? Because as it turns out, Mr. Krabs was waiting for Plankton. Yep, Mr. Krabs had himself a little Batman gambit going for him, and it worked big time. If you don't know what that is, I put a link to the TV Tropes page down below. Anyway, his gambit wasn't a perfect one, as Plankton still manages to steal the formula, At least until SpongeBob and Patrick crashed a train into both him and the bank, and Mr. Krabs is forced to foot the bill for the damage, which he reacts to hilariously. And then before I move on, remember how I was talking about the scene at the Krusty Krab and that there was something else that I was going to mention about it? Yeah, so when you watch that scene, you might leave it wondering why Mr. Krabs isn't there. But now that we're this far into the episode, you realize that the reason he's not there is because he was already in Farawayville, waiting on Plankton. We love tight writing. The very ending of The Great Patty Caper comes entirely out of nowhere, and I love it. Just one last little twistery, I suppose. We cut to 75 years in the future, where SpongeBob is apparently telling this story to his grandkid, who could not care less. And I love that SpongeBob is the type of guy who'd keep his house even after all the futuristic buildings surround it. Though not seeing Squidward's and Patrick's houses kind of makes me almost sad. Damn, why did I just kill the mood? Sorry. Alright, so let me sum things up. I mean, the simplest thing I can say is that The Great Patty Caper is great and underrated as hell. I never see anyone talk about this episode, and it doesn't take much to guess that people generally find it to be meh or even bad. And I simply disagree with that, because I found this episode to be fantastic. It was funny, it was entertaining, it was interesting, and I think the pacing was great as well, as that is something that SpongeBob SquarePants specials tend to struggle with. And this is easily one of the best specials that we've had since SpongeBob SquarePants vs. the Big One and Friend or Foe. And so that is why this episode is being put in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.3 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine, although I'm not sure that I have much. I did keep all of my tangents to the review itself, so it's like, what do I say now? I guess one thing I could say is that I think this episode, on top of being underrated, is just kind of forgotten about, and I'm not really sure why. Why is it that all the specials that I really like are the most forgotten ones? Between this, SpongeBob SquarePants vs. the Big One, and Ugh, I'm just collecting them like Pokemon or something. Maybe my love of mysteries and trains and mysteries on trains has biased me. Well, I don't like that phrasing. It's like I've said before, all reviews are subjective, and things that we like outside of the show context are going to influence our opinions. That's just how it works. And so this episode appealed to me in that way. Ain't nothing wrong or illegitimate about that. It felt nice to have lots of things that I was putting in the description for once. I feel like I go back and forth between having a lot and having nothing. I like bringing in random shit that connects with an episode. It amuses me and is reflective of the way my brain works, making connections with a bunch of different things all the time. Does that mean I have good pattern recognition? Or would that mean something else? Who knows? Certainly not me. But I think that's the thought that I'll leave y'all with today, since I've got no others, and so I'll close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.